Okay, so now, quick show of hands. Who in the room knows who this man is? Wow, not many. That's interesting. Okay, this chap is Tim Berners-Lee. He was the inventor of the World Wide Web. Now, he did something pretty special. He invented that, and he gave the web to the world for free, for no money. I'm stealing David's line. I think he said this in Toronto. But the question here is, what did we do with that gift? So as an industry, and there's question marks around that, of course. And so Tim set up something called the World Wide Web Foundation. Why? Because his concern is that 50% of the world cannot access the web, and the other 50% are facing really unappealing risks in relation to our privacy, to our democracy, and our rights. So they started something called the Campaign for the Web. Now, I won't let you read this whole text, but part of that is called the Contract for the Web, which they're basically asking governments, companies, and individuals to sign up to. But the worrying part here that you can read is that a big part of it actually focuses to our industry. So he says ad-based revenue models that commercially reward clickbait and the viral spread of misinformation. So this is what we're focusing on today. But hang on, I just wanted, in defense, if you like, of advertising, I'm going to talk over this ad if you don't mind. Most of us came into marketing really to create things because we perhaps had a hidden creative talents, frustrated creatives like me or innovators. But actually, we're producing work like this. This is a campaign for Ariel India. I encourage you to Google it after this, from Procter & Gamble. Hugely successful campaign called Share the Load. And it's really started a movement, if you like, in India in terms of a conversation about the role of fathers and men in the home, and why should it always be the wife and the mother who's actually doing all the housework. So in addition to that, so a real sort of societal impact. In addition to that, I understand that that the volume sales rose by 106% off the back of this campaign. Walk.com, you might have heard of, voted it, basically named it as the world's most effective ad of that year. So the point is, we can deliver value to the business and also to people. So that's the argument, if you like, in defense of advertising. Yet on the flip side, the reality of many people's, as consumers or users, experience, I think is pretty well captured in this short film.
Well, looky here. Looks like we got someone in the market for a new pair of shoes,
Oh, I just got them, so I'm not looking anymore.
A guy who knows what he likes and takes it.
I'm sorry, who are you?
Oh, I'm just a door-to-door targeted salesman, and buddy, I'm here to help.
A targeted salesman?
That's right. I know your entire internet history. Your likes, your dislikes, your friends, your family, age, sex, location, where you've been, where you're going, favorite websites, and it's all to get you the stuff you want when you want it.
I just needed a new pair of shoes, and I got them, so thanks, but no thanks.
How did you? Oh, I'm everywhere, and a good thing for you, and for your wallet. Now, I don't show this to just anyone, but I can tell you're a savvy customer, so here is something that you are guaranteed to like.
Yeah, those are the shoes I just bought.
I knew you'd like them.
Yeah, but I just bought them, so I don't need another pair.
Ooh, boy, you are one tough customer, you know that? Well, at least let me show you some baby clothes I know you'll love.
I don't need them. My girlfriend's not pregnant, so.
Oh, she didn't tell... Oh.
So hopefully you get the point in terms of what we're trying to achieve here today. I think as a group, we're probably pretty well disposed towards advertising, but there's two sides. Question is, are we a force for good on the web as advertisers, or is advertising really what's wrong with the web? Now, we're going to have a debate, a heated debate. A little word of warning, we're all smart here. We know that the world is not black and white, and we know the marketers have come on stage, have been pretty brave, actually, to be honest with you, and have agreed to play a role in terms of the teams that they're going to be on. Yeah, what they say on stage may well not be representative of their company, so to our colleagues from the press, wherever you are out there, please don't quote them as though they're representing their organizations today. First of all is Kate Moore. Next up is Miko Kotila, Sarah Martins Oliveira, and last but certainly not least is Blake Cahill. But before we hand over to our debaters, we're going to cast your vote. So if we could throw up the question up here. What we're going to do is we're going to ask whether you agree or disagree with the motion, advertising is what's wrong with the web. A very simple question. So as you vote, what we're going to do is we're going to have the debate I'm going to try and remember what the numbers were, and then we're going to come back and see if the needle moved after we've had the debate. So maybe if we could just throw up the results. Disagree. Okay. So we've got 65% agreeing with our red team over here, that advertising is not what's wrong with the web, essentially, and 35% of you agreeing with the team over in the green, who are arguing that they agree with the motion. So thank you very much for casting your votes.
I mean, I think this, I don't remember who had the quote, but I mean, if you're a brand and you think you're in control, your head's in the sand. I mean, the customers are completely in control of your brand, and I think you make good points. People don't trust brands anymore. Go look at the latest Edelman Trust Barometer. So you have to build experiences. You have to live up to your brand promise in so many different ways now. And I think this plays into it. Brand safety and these types of things, and protecting people's data. And we at Philips, I mean, a huge part of our business is actually in the medical space. So it is regulated by the FDA. It's regulated soon by the EU MDR. So I mean, we really believe that customers' data is critically important to our brand. And I think these people coming up today are absolutely coming up in a world where they're in control of the experience with the brand, and I think the brand has to acknowledge that and create different ways of interacting with them in a protected and safe way. Another
stat that I tend to disagree what you're saying, people looking more to advocacy. If I look at our business, telecom, almost every purchase starts with an online search. Almost every. So it's a fundamental part of the customer journey. Of course, where do people then comment? Yes, it's online, but they are impacted by advertising a lot, and we have all those measurements to prove that. So it is very important that we bring to customers online very good creative that's relevant, truly personalized, and we acknowledge that's easier for first-party data owners, but that people will engage with. And they do engage with. So
Mikko, I'd like to turn it to you. We're talking a little bit here about essentially funding the web, Google Maps, search, tools that have been created based on advertising revenues. Any response to that?
Yeah, great. So I think that one of the bigger myths around the internet is that advertising funds free content. So the first and foremost to understand is that 1 GB of data that I mentioned, that accounts to roughly 200 page views. And those 200 page views, they are mostly somehow related to advertising when it comes to the cost that the person pays. And as I had mentioned, is that in bandwidth cost, in many countries, a person will pay in excess of 1/10 of their monthly salary. So if we take 80% out of that, now we know that there are many countries where in excess of 8% of their monthly salary they pay just for advertising being on the web. So that's really important to understand, because those people are mostly from poor countries, and they're often females, and they're often the youth. So actually what we have now is that we have a scientific basis, a framework where we can show that the current online advertising model, not as a blanket advertising in the internet or brand building in the internet, but the current model is actually a cause for keeping people in poverty. It is the absolute opposite of free internet.
Let's start with the poverty one. And I mean, we have the greatest leap of people coming out of poverty in the past 20 to 30 years. Look at China, look at parts of Africa. One of the things that the internet has allowed people to do, even though they've had to pay for it, is access to information. It has transformed banking in Kenya. It has transformed people's lives in remote villages for healthcare. that we deliver those services. There is always a cost. There's a cost to everything. Electricity costs money. Does everything need to be more sustainable? I would completely agree with sustainability for the consumption of providing the internet. But I would totally counter-argue that it's a tax on people. What I do think, and I don't know if anybody saw, there was a really interesting article in the New York Times 2 days ago about human engagement is the new luxury good. And if you think about our relationships with some of these platforms, we give up data and our privacy at times in order to have these services. And now I could see in the future, if you paid to opt out of it, then you could consider this being like a tax on people. But I don't agree that it keeps people in poverty. I think it really raises the bar for access.
But sorry, so how about in terms of the discrimination accusation? You obviously invest heavily in targeted advertising. How does that strike you? So a lot of accusations.
No, I listening to this and then looking at all the inclusion programs we've got at Vodafone, feels to me we're talking about two different worlds completely. I almost feel like I'd show the video now that we had for International Women's Week and all the efforts we're doing to give access to the internet to people who, without that, are completely excluded from communities because we have a footprint of markets outside Western Europe where we all feel very connected, but we're in places in Africa or in places in the Middle East where women are almost not allowed to have a mobile phone. And what we want is to, through advertising, to say we've got a program, donate your mobile phone to somebody that with that can start their business. And we have this amazing story of this woman in Africa. She had an amazing gift. She does this amazing dresses with access to the internet through a program we advertised heavily. Actually, she was able to start her own business and set a marketplace. How do you do that without having access?
So advertising helping to create platforms, social platforms, for example. Potentially giving a voice to the impoverished, so the complete opposite from what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I think that the contrast here is that I'm talking about science, I'm talking about quantitative data, and our dear opponents are talking in terms of anecdotes. So I do really appreciate what you say, and I don't want to take that away, and I don't want to take any value out of what you were talking about. But when you are, for example, mentioning banking in Kenya, it has nothing to do with advertising. It's the banks themselves that are providing those services.
No.
I'm an internet developer since mid-90s. I love this stuff. So everything that you said, I completely agree with, but none of that was an argument against what I said. I said two things. One, people pay 10% of their monthly salary just to get 1 GB of data, and 1% or possibly more of all global energy consumption goes just to the advertising part of the internet. Those are two very clear arguments.
But clearly there's a high value proposition for them to part with that percentage of their salary in order to get access.
High value proposition?
And there's high value for them to have that access. So
really?
I'm not saying whether the cost is proper for that place, because I can't judge that.
So we agree on that, yeah? That it's a proper price for it, yeah?
No, I'm not agreeing it's a proper price.
But it's a price. We agree on that, right?
I'm saying that I agree that the person highly values the service, so they're willing to part with 10%.
So we agree, then it's a price, right?
Okay,
because that means it's not free. My only argument is that it's not free.
What is free?
Advertising does not. Nothing, and nothing should
in life
be free.
Is free.
But your argument was
Isn't that a horrible thing when you learn that when you're a child? That day you realize that, nothing in life is free.
That's
you really
it.
thought things were free.
You made the argument
so
for
first
me.
Of all, no, but where do we get this notion that the internet is free?
You said it. You said advertising funds a free internet, and I countered it. But now you had helped me and made my case. So I really want to thank you.
No.
I didn't say that.
So,
we agree.
I think we're a bit off feast.
Yeah.
What we meant by free is, who here has a friend that started their startup on the internet? Hands up. How amazing is that? How is that friend able to launch the business? if not by advertising it through reach.
Yeah.
That's what we meant. Who here is in the publishing industry? Couple. You know how it is that you need advertising to be able to have a digital model. That's what we meant.
So the publishers, how does your P&L look now compared to how it looked when you were still pre-digital?
Are we against the
Yeah.
Again, I think we're off piece.
So how
we're
about
not debating
thinking
the internet. We're debating advertising on the internet.
So coming back to advertising, thinking about funding growth, for an example, I'm going to, Kate, if you like, or Miko, either of you. So there was a study that just came out with Deloitte and Apan, our co-hosts here, that basically said every €1 invested in advertising returns 4. And I think within the EU, Deloitte's calculations, I think it now represents about 4% of GDPR in the UK. So surely I think Mark Pritchard uses the that if we all increase, all boats will rise together. So surely a positive impact, no?
Yeah, I think that we have to separate the effect of advertising, and that's undeniable. Advertising is the key driving force of healthy market economics.
Good, keep that. Say that again. Just as you did with the price. Say that again.
Is an absolutely vital force for market economy. Market economies die without successful brand building, and that's why I'm concerned with our current digital advertising model. Our dear opponents mentioned job creation. And advertising creates an amazing number of jobs. But you know what? According, again, to data from US Labor of Statistics, or Bureau of Labor Statistics, actually, there is a net job loss in advertising as the digital majority grows. So there is no data, any data that supports that digital advertising in its current model is an actual job driver. It is easily explained why there was a significant uptick initially, because there were so many new skills that needed to be there at the same time with the conventional skills. But now, I think last 2 years already, there is actual net job loss. And if you look at the US job market, it's actually not that trend. It's an opposite trend to the overall US job market.
I think, again, we're a confusing point. Are we talking about job market or advertising in the internet? Because you keep talking about the whole world, then you talk about, you're questioning whether the web is good. We're talking about advertising online.
Every industry is being disrupted and transformed by the internet, and that is creating a change of the value exchange and where the money goes. So publishing traditionally is changed. But that's every industry is being changed. So I don't think you can just make the argument that advertising is destroying jobs.
No, it wasn't my argument. Your argument in your opening speech was that it creates jobs. I said that now as it's again quantitative data. I'm not making this up. And it is probably the most authoritative source for looking at advertising job creation data is the US government data. So I'm just trying to highlight that we don't know if digital advertising in itself is an actual job creator. We know as a fact advertising is.
Well, we know that the
Kate, you want to give you a bit of
I struggle a bit with the idea of how you can pull apart the internet and the advertising argument, I guess. So if I think about ethically, so there are parliamentary papers that have been published recently that talk about 27% of children who spend 3 hours, online a day have got mental health issues. That's children. Okay, this is broader than just children. This is all of us. We're all obsessed. The first thing we look at in the morning is our phone. We're online. We're on social. We're obsessed with it. So don't we, as advertisers, aren't we kind of fueling that in a way?
Every year we do a campaign in International Women's Week. It's about talking about inclusion. And this specifically campaign was about what was discussed many times today, unstereotyping. Now, it is very important that we do that. This is the type of advertising that really creates a huge change. Because who else will do that? So yes, I'm worried that kids see that, but kids will also see on stereotypes brought by us, and so on and so forth.
So can I just ask a question on that? Sorry. So great that you've done that, big fan of that, but did you target the people that ad was showed to, or did you do a mass market campaign?
Of course we target. We're telco. We
So
are
isn't
very
that
rich in
deliberately
first-party data. We're a big believer
exclusive?
in personalization. It can be done much better. The thing is, everything is moving so fast in the internet. We're all learning. Actually, we use a lot internally. We're all absolute beginners, and if you go with this mentality, you keep learning and improving. Now, personalization is a huge weapon to overcome all of these issues. We are doing that, and we will collectively, the industry, I say we, us, all of us, we will get better and better at doing that. Very relevant.
So we move away from targeting, we move away from personalization. What's the answer? We go back to spray and pray, and that, which is clearly going to ostracize consumers more. What's your...
Well, that's a very relevant topic for me, because I created one of the early personalization platforms and then spent next 10 years from there building on that, all kinds of ad tech solutions. So I do believe a lot in meaningful use of data, especially when it's on a first-party level. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that the bigger question Rob is positing here is like, okay, well, if we don't have this current system, what are we going to do then? And I want to encourage you to be brave, to accept the fact that we cannot know the future. It's impossible.
No, we don't.
We can predict it, or we can think about it, we can have ideas about it, but the part about it that we don't know, we don't know. And it will never change. So if that's a force that keeps us from boldly experimenting with things that are totally different from what we're doing right now, then we're never going to do that. Then whatever we have right now, all these problems, they will perpetuate. I don't argue that I know everything, but I do know the ins and outs of the ad tech system from an insider standpoint, not from an advertiser standpoint, but from an insider standpoint. And it is a fundamentally flawed system. And I appreciate that advertisers have goodwill towards it and have inspiring ideas on how to make it better. But I really want to encourage you to think bolder, bigger, think beyond the current system. Think beyond personal data. Yeah, maybe personal data will play a role in it. But I think that all the people here have an amazing opportunity to imagine, because with this new digital environment, this internet I think we all love, everything is possible. I know how to program myself, and I know that whatever I can imagine, I can create. So I want you to really believe that whatever you can imagine, you can go forth with to your partners and have them create it. And then that will answer Rob's question. What will we have in place of what we have today?
So the incumbent system that we have right now, Blake, please. The incumbent system that we have right now, I think what Mikko's saying as well, part of what he's saying is that consumers, people lose, brands lose. The only people that win are the thousands of companies in the middle. So think of Terry Kawaja's Lumascapes today. Those are the people who are benefiting.
I think there is a benefit for the brand and the consumer if you can, be in the right place at the right time with the right content. And the example I always use, and you're adding value. We've recently connected some of our contact center and our CRM system. And, if you called in with a return product, a broken toothbrush or a shaver or something else, I think it's my duty with the stack of data and information I have to make sure that afternoon I don't serve you an ad or send you an email the next day for something you just called in for yesterday and said, is it broken? I think that's quite responsible, and we have the data and technology that allows us to deliver better experience. So I think, I'm not condoning the fact that we have 28 different landscapes like what's his name showed us. It is a bit of a nightmare out there, and also like the video he played. But I do think that there is, parts of the technology and MarTech stack that I think are really, relevant to being able to deliver better customer experience and better building relationships with our customers. And I think that should be leveraged because I think we deserve that as customers.
Yep.
And that is a responsibility of the brands.
Okay, so done right.
Done right.
Yep.
Done right.
So we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I'd like to invite each of you perhaps.
That's when you're supposed to
based
clap.
on
Done right.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask each of you now, perhaps based on the debate, if there were one thing that you were going to share with the group in terms of the audience here, in terms of one thing that you'd like to see change or one thing that you'd like to recommend or ask of them, what would it be?
Well, I think two things. In general, I love that, again, we came after Raja. I think we all have to be very respectful of what we do in the internet with advertising. And again, unbundle it to creative, media, and where you serve it. Make sure you select at least one impactful activity that makes sense for your company and your business with what you currently do to make a change. I don't know if you've read a book called Nudge, but read it. Because if each one of us goes back to your everyday life, to your company, and does that, together, this industry will create a huge impact and solve many, many of the aspects.
Terrific.
Yeah, I would, two points as well. One is, and I think we started this, I think it's not just because we're between you and lunch, I think it's amazing that we are having this conversation. And like we said in our opening, it isn't the brands, that ad stack, the platforms, outside regulation that's going to solve this. We need to shape this, and we need to shape it for now because this is not going anywhere, the internet. What we also don't know is what's next. A billion drones flying around and, flashing advertising at you or something. Who knows where the world's going? So I think it's critically important that, this is an emerging space and an emerging industry. We need more regulation. When cars were put on the road, there were not speed limits. There were no seatbelts. It took that industry a long time. And if you think about many people, you guys are quite young, does anybody not put their seatbelt on anymore? Of course you put your seatbelt on. You know one of the reasons why? That annoying sound. That's in every car now. So my point is, I think we can do this together. It's a 20-year-old industry, and we need to do more all together. And we owe it to our kids and ourselves.
Okay. Kate?
So I guess a couple of things.
Next. Sorry, Kate.
Couple of things for me. It's just hilarious, isn't it? Come and do a debate where you can't talk. So I think what I'd love to do is see a kind of a world where, advertising is not just in the control of a few big monolithic companies, and that they're not the ones controlling everyone's opinions and the advertising that they see. And secondly,
she's going to win because of that breathy voice.
I really want to see a world where, excuse me, new technology like voice technology.
Okay, you got to give her a couple points.
Irony.
Oh, you poor thing.
Oh, God.
Where voice technology and where people are able to make purchase decisions based on convenience, where you'll just say to your smart home assistant, get me whatever you can get me in 10 minutes, sits alongside the conventional models that we're used to. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Final word to my friend Mikko.
Save the best for last.
I think the answer is really simple. Yesterday's evening program was all about that. I think today Raja's talk was about that. I think all of David's stint as the president was all about that. The future is about better marketing. And how do we do that? We do that by working with partners that are truly compatible with that. But of course, we ourselves first must become compatible with that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Whatever that means. Broad.
Okay?
So I'd like to say thank you so much, particularly to Kate. That was tense, wasn't it?
You're not
I think she was
dying, are you?
But thank you all so much. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that have come out of that in terms of the role of the platforms. Personally, I think the outcome for me is this is not about the what, it's about the how. And I think there probably was agreement. Yes, I see nodding heads, which is good overall. But now, because it's fun, we're going to turn back to you and see if our debaters have managed to change your opinions. So if at the back we could throw up the poll, hopefully that will work. That'd be, ooh, look at that.
61-39.
It has moved 4 percentage points towards you, but
job, guys.
all in a bit of fun. But listen, please join me once again in thanking our debaters. Thank you very much.
My vote.